The morning of August 5, 1962, should have been treated like any other suspicious death investigation. Instead, almost from the moment police arrived at Marilyn Monroe's Los Angeles home, questions began to emerge that would survive for decades. Long before investigators had finished documenting the scene, something unexpected was already happening inside the house. According to one of the first responding officers, the washing machine was running, and the bed sheets had already been placed inside. That unusual detail has remained one of the most discussed aspects of Marilyn Monroe's final hours. Marilyn Monroe was only 36 years old, yet she was already one of the biggest stars in the world. Just a few months earlier, she had captivated millions with her unforgettable performance of "Happy Birthday" at President John F. Kennedy's birthday celebration. Despite her enormous success, those closest to her knew she had been dealing with personal struggles, including insomnia, anxiety, and a growing dependence on prescription medications. Behind the glamorous image that audiences admired was a woman facing constant emotional pressure. The official investigation concluded that Monroe died from acute barbiturate poisoning, and her death was classified as a probable suicide. However, the word "probable" left room for debate, and over the years countless researchers, journalists, and authors have questioned whether every important detail was fully understood. While no conclusive evidence has overturned the official findings, several unanswered questions have continued to fuel public curiosity. One person who has remained at the center of those questions is Eunice Murray, Monroe's live-in housekeeper. Murray was more than a housekeeper. She had training as a psychiatric nurse and had been recommended by Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, to help care for the actress during a difficult period in her life. Because she was inside the house that night, her account became one of the most important pieces of the investigation. According to Murray's first statement, she noticed a light still shining from Monroe's bedroom during the early morning hours. After receiving no response, she contacted Dr. Greenson, who came to the home and entered the bedroom before police were called. Yet as the years passed, Murray's timeline changed more than once. Some of the details she shared in later interviews differed from her original account, leading many observers to question whether her memory had faded over time or whether important details had never been fully explained. Even decades later, historians remain divided. Some believe the inconsistencies are simply the result of aging and imperfect memory, while others argue they deserve closer examination. What is certain is that Marilyn Monroe's death remains one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries, not because a different conclusion has been proven, but because several questions raised in the original investigation have never been answered in a way that satisfies everyone. One of the biggest reasons Marilyn Monroe's death continues to be debated is because the timeline of her final night has never been completely free of contradictions. According to the first official account, Eunice Murray became concerned after noticing that Monroe's bedroom remained closed and unusually quiet during the early morning hours. She attempted to check on Marilyn but received no response. Instead of calling emergency services immediately, Murray contacted Dr. Ralph Greenson, Monroe's psychiatrist, who soon arrived at the house. By the time police were finally notified, more than an hour had reportedly passed, creating a delay that investigators and historians have questioned for decades. When officers entered the bedroom, they found Marilyn Monroe unresponsive on her bed. Doctors later determined that she had died from acute barbiturate poisoning, and the official investigation concluded that her death was a probable suicide. However, several details from that morning immediately caught investigators' attention. The unusually long gap before police were contacted, the activity inside the home before authorities arrived, and differing recollections from those present all became subjects of discussion. While none of these details alone proved wrongdoing, together they created questions that have never completely disappeared. Another important figure in the story was Dr. Ralph Greenson. More than simply Monroe's psychiatrist, he had become deeply involved in her daily life during her final years. He regularly visited her home, encouraged her recovery, and even, perhaps the most controversial moment came during a television interview decades later, when Murray briefly mentioned claims involving prominent political figures before later withdrawing those remarks. No credible evidence has ever confirmed those allegations, and they have never been substantiated by official investigations. Because of that, most modern historians urge caution when discussing such claims, emphasizing the importance of separating documented facts from speculation. Even so, the interview added another layer to a mystery that had already fascinated the public for years. More than 60 years have passed since Marilyn Monroe's death, yet interest in the case has never faded. Books, documentaries, and independent investigations continue to revisit the evidence, searching for answers that may never come. The official conclusion has not changed, but the unanswered questions surrounding the final hours of Marilyn Monroe's life continue to ensure that one of Hollywood's brightest stars remains at the center of one of its greatest mysteries. As public interest in Marilyn Monroe's death continued to grow, investigators, journalists, and historians began taking a closer look at the people who were with her during her final days. Attention often returned to Eunice Murray because she was the last confirmed person inside the house before emergency services arrived. Every interview she gave added new details, but it also introduced fresh inconsistencies, making it increasingly difficult to separate established facts from personal recollections. One issue that has never completely disappeared is the amount of time that passed before police were notified. Different accounts have suggested different timelines, with estimates varying depending on when Murray believed Monroe was first in distress. While some researchers argue that the delay reflected confusion during a medical emergency, others believe the sequence of events should have been investigated more thoroughly. Even official reviews acknowledged that certain details from the original investigation could not be fully verified decades later. During the early 1980s, authorities revisited Monroe's case to determine whether a new criminal investigation was justified. After reviewing available evidence and interviewing surviving witnesses, officials concluded that there was not enough evidence to reopen the case as a homicide investigation. However, they also recognized that some inconsistencies remained unresolved because important witnesses had died and physical evidence from 1962 was no longer available. As a result, the official findings remained unchanged, even though public curiosity continued. Over the years, countless theories have attempted to explain Marilyn Monroe's final hours. Some focus on her struggles with prescription medication, while others suggest political connections or hidden motives. Yet despite decades of speculation, no credible investigation has produced evidence strong enough to overturn the official conclusion. Many of the most dramatic claims rely on anonymous sources, conflicting memories, or stories that cannot be independently verified, which is why historians continue to urge caution when examining the case. Perhaps that is why Marilyn Monroe's story has endured for so many generations. It is not simply because she was one of Hollywood's greatest stars, but because the circumstances surrounding her death left behind questions that history has never completely answered. More than 60 years later, her legacy continues to inspire admiration, while the mystery surrounding her final night reminds us that some of the world's most famous stories may never have a definitive ending.